Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, welcome to Industrial Talk, where we celebrate industry heroes such as yourself. You are bold, you are brave, you dare greatly, you solve problems, you're changing lives, and you're changing the world. Do not forget that. That's what you are doing each and every day, and that's why we celebrate you on this particular podcast. All right, in the hot seat, we have a gentleman by the name of Paul Kiesche. Now, it's spelled Kiesche. Aviate Creative. He is the president, and we're going to be talking about branding. And if you don't think branding is important, after this particular podcast, you'll say, wow, branding is important. Let's get cracking. All right, you know I'm always talking about industry being the dream makers, the miracle workers, the individuals that really are impacting this new and brave future, right? I say it all the time because I am such a fan of what industry is doing around the world. And fortunately for me and for Team Industrial Talk, we get a chance to constantly highlight these individuals and the hope that they bring to the future. And it's big. Dream makers, miracle workers, and hope. That's what you guys are doing. And I just want to make sure that you never, ever forget that. Now, speaking of which, I know that you've heard me talk about this before, but I have to reiterate and speak when I've had countless hours of conversations that are wrapped around innovation, wrapped around Industry 4.0, cloud, edge, all of the neat and unique innovation that is taking place out there. One of the questions that always comes to me is like, where's it being implemented? Where's it being put into action? Now, it is being put into action in a lot of places, but one of the areas that are just absolutely, positively bought in on creating the future today, the community of today, and that's NEOM, right? So if you're out there on video, you'll see it out there. This, of course, is a podcast, but it's a video, too. If you go out to Industrial Talk, the YouTube channel, you'll also see the video. But you'll see this website, and it's just NEOM, right? And why I'm so fascinated by NEOM is the fact that they're taking all of this incredible tech and putting their money where their mouth is, and they're doing it, and they're executing on it. And I want to just encourage you to go out to neom.com, right, and just look. Just look at the website. Look at the brave and bold passion that they have on developing this community of the future. It's fantastic. It is. It's fantastic, and I'm going to keep on pushing this. If you ever have a chance to reach out to Beverly Ryder, and she has recently just joined Team NEOM, she is all about changing the world, and that's why industry is so exciting. That's why this is so exciting. Go out there. I highly encourage you to go to neom.com. The other area that I want to just sort of point out is when we start talking about creating content, right? And we're going to be talking about branding in this particular podcast, but when we start talking about creating content, are you just sort of bent on just saying, okay, we created whatever the content is. If it's poor content, so be it. If it's low entertainment, so be it. If it's low engagement, meaning low time, so be it, the low learning. So we've got to sort of up our game. So I have this engagement quadrant, and it's broken into, and I've spoken about this before, but I want to offer it to you to just sort of keep this in mind when you're creating your content, because you have to be successful. If you're an industrial professional, you have to be successful. If you're an industrial company, you have to be successful. And part of that success comes with creating content that is both great, right? Solving problems, right? And it's got max entertainment, max engagement time, because if I'm not engaged, I don't care if you got the cure for cancer, if I'm not engaged, so what, right? And then max learning, because we have to be about that education. We have to be about that learning. We have to be about everything that's associated with industry. Here is just an engagement content that encourages you to create great content, solving problems, max entertainment. That means maximizing the human component as well as the fun component, and you'll see an improvement on how you're opening up opportunities. And we've got to open up opportunities, especially this post-pandemic world that we live in. Opportunity, opening doors, a must. All right, let's get on with the interview. I rambled on that one, but I'm telling you, right, you need to go to neom.com. I get all tickly when I see that website because it's pretty cool. It's a bold vision for the future, neom.com. All right, Paul Kiesche, Aviate Creative. We're going to be talking about branding and why branding is so important. One of the points that I think is really important with branding is that you got to stop that commodity sales, right? Do not become commoditized. And if you're branded properly, you avoid that commoditization of your business, which is really vital, right? You don't want to fall into that category. I've lived that category. I've lived it, and it's not fun because you're constantly hammering on the margins that you can make as a business. Also, we're having challenges gaining and getting quality talent into the doors, people, resources, branding, all a part of that. All right, enjoy the conversation with Paul. Paul, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast, the number one industrial-related podcast in the universe, and I don't think I'm overselling it by any stretch of the imagination. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Scott, for having me. This is wonderful.
Thank you very much for spending time and sharing your wisdom and insights into branding, which, it's interesting, listeners. I didn't realize how important branding was until I was in business, and branding was everything. And so it sort of slaps you upside the head and you realize how important it is. But before we get into that great conversation, give us a little background on who Paul is.
Yeah, sounds good. So I own Aviate Creative, a creative agency with an edge in manufacturing. So we specialize primarily in the industrial businesses, manufacturing, engineering areas, and also technology. So, we can help with things like branding, certainly, and then web design, print design, writing, collateral, that kind of stuff.
Why just for the listeners out here who don't think that branding's important, which it is, by the way, FYI, why is branding important?
It's interesting. A lot of manufacturers and industrial companies kind of think of branding as just like a pretty picture and a pretty image, but it's so impactful for the brands. And so many of these brands used to think it was important. So many of them looked great back in the 70s or 80s or 100 years ago, and now they're way outdated. So some of the reasons why they might be thinking that it might be important is one of the primary things that people think of is increasing sales. So certainly branding makes an impact on new prospects. Well, the interesting thing is that a lot of manufacturers will tell me, well, sales is not a problem. Right now, we have other problems. So some of the things that it could also help with is it can help recruitment and retention issues.
So big time now, baby. Yeah. Big time.
It can help, when you're selling your company and exiting your company. It can help change your commodity, your commodity thinking. So instead of thinking that you're going to be selling this commodity product, you can become more of a premium product or just sell based on other factors. So there's a lot of different things that branding can kind of influence and change for your company that a lot of companies are not considering.
Yeah, I think a couple of points that really stood out. One, you don't want to be in a commoditized business. That's one thing. And if branding can help you differentiate your value proposition and to become more of a premium product, that's a plus. The other thing that I find in manufacturing is the recruitment and retention challenges that exist today. And I would imagine it becomes very difficult if you have a dated logo, dated culture, dated whatever that's circa 1970s plus. What do we do? How do we begin to journey down that road of saying, okay, I hear you, Paul, man. What do I do?
Yeah. So much of it is perception based. When say if you're talking about an employee or if you're talking about a prospect sale, they have a certain perception about manufacturing. They have a certain perception about your brand and your company. And if that perception, if they look at your brand and your website and your company and they see an outdated, something that looks like it's from the 70s, something that looks dirty and greasy and stuff like that, they're going to relate that to your brand. If they see your company and it looks like it was run by college kids because it's so poorly done, they're going to think that your whole company and your products are run that way. So perception is huge. You can massively impact perception by changing the branding of a company.
I would imagine it's even more so today. I mean, it just seems that given the culture that we live in, given what it is, I know I'm easily swayed. I'm not going to just be gravitating to a website that does look dated. I just don't think that's good business. So I agree with you 100%. There's a massive perception. What do we, I mean, let's talk about that perception. How do we start changing that? Once again, I want to change it. Yes, I'm dated, whatever. Let's start talking about that perception.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of that is defining who you are. So understanding your positioning. So, do you want to, and one thing a lot of people don't realize is that branding can be a reflection of who you are now, but you can also, when you design branding, you want to reflect who you want to be. So if you want to be a bigger company, if you want to be, national instead of regional or international, if you want to be more professional or more fun or more exciting, the perception of your branding can change all of that. So, and even for employees, like employees can be much more excited about the idea that they're working for a fun, big company than working for some small, boring company kind of thing. So that perception can be swayed significantly. And a lot of that's done with positioning. So you want to define your target audience, define your niche market. You want to really kind of understand your competition and how you differ from your competition and what's your advantages, right? So, and then branding can help, really pull together a lot of that with taglines, with imagery, with the colors, everything. It can help emphasize all your differentiations and emphasize why you're better and stronger than you.
Yeah, and there are a lot of companies out there that are just absolute nuts about their branding position, and it's a good discipline to get into. So if you don't think that branding is not important, or positioning your product, or finding that niche is not important, just look at some of the successful companies around there and try to have a conversation that goes sort of away from that brand. It doesn't. It's always on brand, on purpose, on target, on niche. They're so disciplined about it. You need to be disciplined about that too.
One of my favorite things is like manufacturers will often say to me, they'll point to a company like Apple and they'll say, well, Apple has this logo that does this and they have this site. And I'm said, okay, well, Apple actually pays attention to their branding. Oh. Apple used to look differently. Apple used to have a rainbow in their logo. They used to have the word Apple next to it. And it evolved over time and it changed and it got better and stronger and simplified and cleaner. And their website has not been the same. It changes probably, every year, every 2 years or something. So to compare yourself to that and then to not adapt with the times, it just doesn't make sense. Same thing goes for UPS, FedEx, Pepsi, all these brands. They didn't start, with one thing and then just stop. They all continue to evolve.
There's so many examples out there that you go to, just look out on fast foods and how fast food has changed. There's like the logo. And it's just, once again, if you find yourself in a position that you have a stagnant brand, you might be just passionate about it. That logo, that color combination, whatever it might be, I guarantee you can improve upon it because you got great people like Paul and others that understand it's psychology too, right? There's a psychology about it. Can you explain a little bit about that? I mean, I'm sort of geeking on that one.
Yeah. And you touched on something as well, which is, a lot of times there's brand equity involved. So people are like, oh, they're in love with their brand and are like, they want to hold on to it. But a lot of brands can hold on to brands, but update and stay evolved. Like Apple's a great example of that, where it's always had that Macintosh Apple with the bite taken out of it, but it's gotten a little more refined over the years. So you can stay true and pay tribute to an old logo, but refresh it. So that's certainly part of that, which was part of your first question. I'm sorry, what was the second?
The psychology, the psychology of it. It's like, even I know that if I look at something, and I'm not an expert like you, I'm not an expert like a lot of people, but I just intuitively know if I'm looking at something and it just doesn't feel right, right? It just doesn't feel right. It can, but it doesn't. That's the psychology. And I'm just like, you're put off.
It is very interesting that people know when something's wrong and it's bad, but they don't necessarily know when it's right. And what's really interesting is when people say, oh, marketing doesn't work on me and I don't believe in advertising. It's like, well, you probably do a lot more than you realize. There's a reason you went to the McDonald's down, the highway, because you saw 5 billboards on your way and you didn't realize it and it kind of sunk in, One of my favorite billboards is like the most simple, where it says, something like, by you looking at this proves that it worked, something like that,
Yeah, and you like, sit there and you read the doggone thing, you're going, oh,
they
got me. It's so true. It's spot on.
But psychology is all in it. I mean, there's psychology of the colors. There's the psychology of how professional it looks and how modern and contemporary it looks. And there's like everything. So when we do a logo, we fill out a creative brief where we ask a ton of questions about positioning and the company and all stuff. And they're like, why do you need to know what our brand personality is? And why do you need to know our competitors? It's like, because all of that goes into that simple little image and it makes you stand out, differentiates you. It puts a vibe in there, right? So like, we'll ask what the company personality is. And a lot of people are like, I don't even understand that question. I'm like, okay, so when you guys go out to a bar and have a drink after work, what's the personality? Is it funny? Is it fun? Is it celebratory? What is it? And we try to get into what that difference is. And some are more funny, some are more clever, some are just really, really professional. But if we can pull some of that into the logo, it's just really subtle, really little things that kind of change that. It can drive so much more of the brand personality and the logo.
And it's interesting. You brought up an interesting point, and that is, you don't know how much business you're losing with a stagnant logo or stagnant brand or stagnant whatever. You have no idea, but you know that intuitively you are losing or potentially losing revenue, and that to me is a bottom line. And I mean, I don't know, man. I just think I never thought about brand being so important until it is, right? Yeah. And
I mean, the thing is that like, I talk to so many manufacturers and they say, it's all about relationships and it's all about these existing things. And I say, yes, but if that relationship sees that you're staying with the times and growing, they become more excited and they want to invest more. If you're stagnant and you look like you haven't changed and your site is getting older and older, they start saying, well, we better go look at another vendor because these guys might not be around next year, and they start worrying and eventually start exploring other things and building new relationships. You have to keep fresh. You have to stay current and look relevant. You can't look like what drives me crazy is these manufacturers are producing the future. They're making super high-tech stuff that's super exciting, and then their brands look like they're from the 70s.
Yeah, that's
and I'm like, it's not matching up. You gotta, if you want to sell stuff to aerospace, you should look futuristic, not like it's super old.
See, and that's a really interesting point, and that you're aligning. That is, to your point, positioning and your niche and defining that and aligning that perception, that look in line with your market. I think that's brilliant. And I think that I didn't really think about that, but that is absolutely brilliant. Yeah. I like
without a doubt, and like another totally different direction is like, we worked with a food manufacturer that produced, in this case, they produced matcha powder for like foods and beverages. and they came across really chemical, sterile, because they're a laboratory.
Right.
But I'm like, but that's not what the customer cares about. The customer cares about delicious. They care about culinary, exciting, interesting. And I'm like, you have this amazing product that makes food so exciting, and yet you're showing them a laboratory. I'm like, let's inspire them with gorgeous, beautiful shots of delicious foods and drinks. And that should get them excited, not some laboratory, that kind of thing. So it's all about that perception and all about talking to your audience and understanding your niche market,
Let me ask you this. When I think about going down this, it can be overwhelming, right? I can sit here and say, yeah, it's important. Yeah, I need to, but I don't even know where to start. Can we approach it from an incremental point of view? And then all my stationery has all my old logos, and you know what that conversation's like.
Yep, absolutely.
Where do we start?
Absolutely, you can start incremental. I think there's this ideal of if I create a logo, maybe I even rename it and create a new tagline. And what happens is it starts getting overwhelming because somebody's like, oh my God, I got to do all these things. Branding is not just a logo, right? Branding is also like sometimes all you have to do is add a tagline onto your logo and it speaks to your audience more. Or sometimes you have to just do your website over or your collateral. It's all part of branding. But if you're talking about the logo, one of the beautiful things right now is that most everything's digital. So digital doesn't have to all be printed. You don't have to do your stationery and letterhead right away. You don't have to do your business cards right away. You could start with your website and logo and kind of branch off of there. But it is good to have that full, comprehensive, consistent look all the way across with your brand. Yeah. So certainly that's the ideal, but it does overwhelm people. And one thing that I try to avoid is some customers start adding on to the bill and they keep saying, oh, we need this, we need this, we need this. I said, slow down. Let's do it in phases. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, because if you do it, try and do it all at once, if everybody freezes, the budgets get too tight, companies start panicking. So do a phase 1 approach, you hit a couple things, phase 2 approach, and you roll it out. One thing I want to say though, is that people get nervous about what their customers are going to think and what their employees are going to think when they rebrand. And my answer is always take them on the journey with you. Let the employees and the customers know about it and get excited about it. Like if the customer knows that you're growing and it's the same, all they care about is it the same people? Do we have the same relationships? And then they're excited about the growth and the change. But if you don't bring them with you on the journey and you just announce all of a sudden we're a new logo, then it starts to send panic because they're like, oh my God, are you guys selling? Are you, is it the same people? They start worrying about it. But if you bring them with you and you tease them a little bit and you give them a little bit of a campaign, it turns into a great marketing campaign and they become very excited about the new brand and they feel like they're part of it.
See, I like that. I like that a lot. The one question I would have is, do you think in this world of this pandemic world that we're sort of coming out on the other side, I guess, I don't know. Well, I don't know where we are, but let's say we're coming out on the other side. Do you think that upon reflection, a lot of these companies were just somewhat lax when it came to this and they just sort of got a little lazy? Do you find that today more than ever, it's important that you really nail down that brand more than ever, like clarity?
Well, that's why I brought up the employment thing, because I think it's so interesting. So many of the manufacturers I talk to are saying, we're too busy for this right now. We're too busy for branding, but we can't find anybody to hire. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about hiring people, because when that person goes to find a job and they come onto your site and it looks like a terribly old dated company and it looks gross and stuff like that, they're not going to want to work for you. So maybe don't do it for the sales right now, but do it for the employees, because that's, and for your current employees, so they know that they have a future there, and for your prospect employees so that they get excited about working there. Add that career page on there and make sure you've got the right messaging for them.
See, I like that approach, because I know even I'm very visually attracted to things, and especially now, and I know the market is you've got a tight market out there with, I just think that this is just you got to go down this road. I just agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to go back to your point though, I think that, companies are going to find that they waited too long, and you don't actually really know it. No one's going to tell you. No one's going to be like, oh, your logo is so terrible or whatever. You're just going to start to see more and more of your business go to competitors and not really understand why. And it's because you didn't really stay on top of your marketing, right? Like, it's even when you're the busiest, you need to continually market. So that way, 6 months down the line or a year down the line, you're still that busy. So, I think that you need to stay on top of it. Or
that's important. That you're right. You just can't stop.
Right.
And so give us some roadblocks. I mean, you're talking my talk. Give us some roadblocks. Why there's a problem.
Why somebody might not do it, you're saying?
Yeah.
All right. So, like I said, right now, a lot of people are saying they're too busy for it. They just can't. They can't justify spending the time on it. Another thing is certainly budget, right? So they think it's just too expensive to rebrand. Another roadblock, I guess, would be the brand equity thing that we talked about before. Is that our customers are used to this logo, they love this logo, they think that that kind of thing.
Yeah, they love this logo. Yeah,
they're convinced. They're convinced that that is what got them where they are, and maybe that's the case, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take them the next 40 yards, whatever. It just because it got you that touchdown 5 years ago doesn't mean it's going to continually do that work for you. You have to stay up to date with it. And like I said, you can still pay tribute to your old brand. We have plenty of logos that we've done that still pay tribute to that old brand, but have a whole new contemporary feel to them that just looks fresh and exciting,
I like the incremental approach. I love the fact that you don't have to take these big bang approach and big steps and anything. I think that that's important. Listeners, I think that when we start talking about improving that perception, important. Positioning, defining that niche, all important. You've got to stand out. You've got to differentiate yourself. Do not be commoditized. How do we get a hold of you, Paul?
Sure. Certainly my website's a great place to start. So that's aviatecreative.com. My email's right on there. So you can do hello@aviatecreative.com. And I'm on all the social media. So look me up for Paul Kiesche or Aviate Creative. And I'm certainly loving to connect with you guys.
It's a good thing you're on all those platforms. I was going to say, if you're not, well, come on, man.
No.
Well, that is great. Thank you very much, Paul, for being on the Industrial Talk podcast. I love the topic of branding. Manufacturers, get your branding act together. That's what's important here. And it's gonna be a fun journey. It's not gonna be painful. It's not.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. This was great.
All right, listeners, we're going to wrap it up on the other side, so stay tuned.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right, once again, thank you very much, Paul Kiesche. Thank you for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. Of course, he's the president of Aviate Creative. We talked about branding, so important for your company and your success. Absolutely. Think about your brand big time. Again, Neom, Neom.com. Boy, that is a dead sexy doggone idea and vision for the future. It is a new community. It is leveraging the technology. It is absolutely great. As well as get your, I want you to create great content. I want you to create content that is entertaining, both fun and humanized, because we've got to open up doors and create opportunities for you. That's all out there. Everything, your contact to Paul, everything's out there on industrialtalk.com. All right, be bold, be brave, dare greatly. Hang out with people who are bold and brave and daring greatly, and you're going to change the world, and that's what industry does. Thank you very much for joining Industrial Talk. We're going to have another great interview right around the corner.